So it is, I have the wrong date in front of me. It's Tuesday, April 17th, 10 a.m. We're going to call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we'll jump right into some updates on some different things that have been occurring, and then we'll get into the meeting minutes. The first thing is we did have a meeting with the State Auditors Department. I think it was April 5th, and it was a really good meeting. The Dudley Charlton Regional School District was there. Both town administrators from Dudley and Greg here were there, and had a really good discussion just about the challenges of some regional school districts, and a couple of interesting things that kind of came up. First, it's estimated that the state spends in total, if you look at all the cities and towns, about $7 billion a year on education through the high school level in the Commonwealth. And the big issue is the transportation portion that the state has been falling short reimbursing school districts. And I thought I had written down the number here, and I guess I didn't. But it would come out to close to $1 million, I believe it was, that the Charlton Dudley School District would get back if the state just met their obligations. And so, there's, I'm going to read a couple of things that the Auditors Department's going to do. Across the Commonwealth itself, regional school districts have lost about 10.5% in their enrollment. So the enrollment is going down regionally. Here in Dudley Charlton, it's still pretty much stable. Let's see. Special education transportation costs, $324 million a year. And so what the State Auditors Department is looking at is a couple of different things. There's a really nice comprehensive report that's actually on the State Auditor website. I could probably link it on the website here in Dudley as well for those at home that might want to read this. It was called Supporting Student and Community Success, Updating the Structure and Finance of Massachusetts Regional School Districts. A couple of things that had really jumped out is there's always a feeling that Charlton always feels that they're paying an unfair share portion of the school district. The State Auditor Department said it's actually probably the most well-balanced out of any school district in the Commonwealth, the fairness between Dudley and Charlton. So that was kind of a surprise. Hey, Don.
You got speaking of surprises.
What?
Speaking of surprises, I don't know what to make of this. I haven't had a chance to call to see Mark BC. We'll read this email I got Thursday.
Okay. We'll
when you get to it.
Okay.
About the funding.
Okay. There's a bunch of appendixes here that talk about deficiencies in the regional school districts. Right now, here's where it is. The reimbursement loss that Dudley is short because the state doesn't fulfill is actually $657,386. Then there's $3,600 for homeless student transportation reimbursement loss, and then charter schools, there's a loss there too that the state should be obligated to pay. Legislatively, they're supposed to be paying, but they simply don't. So, what the State Auditors Department is going to try to push for and work with the Senate on is first full funding of the regional transportation reimbursement. And so they're shooting for another $86 million, an increase of $24.5 million over fiscal year 18. The full funding of the McKinley-Vento homeless student transportation, which would be a $22 million increase. And that's an increase of $14 million over fiscal year 18. Permit regional transportation authorities to provide school transportation services. So Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 7C prohibits the use of regional transportation authorities for regional school transportation. So, you know, if the RTA can get students there, like bus passes, you know, and things like that, I mean, why shouldn't that be allowed? Establish expertise at DESE to provide districts with technical assistance. And then there's a Senate Bill 217 to incentivize regionalization, explore alternative structures, governances, and finances. That's the separate tax rate or taxing authority. And so these are some of the things that they're going to try to do right now. We did ask them if they would work with us to actually maybe just get rid of Chapter 70 funding, the whole formula. Because here's the basic pretense of how it works. Basically, since the 1600s, somebody back then said, hey, look, let's tie the school districts into the local community property taxes. And so that's what they've been doing ever since. And it reminds me of a story of this mother who was making a roast. And her daughter was watching her, and she cut off this end of the roast, and she cut off that end of the roast and then put it in the oven. And then the little girl asked her mother, Mom, why do you cut off the ends of the roast? Oh, well, that's how you're supposed to do it. That's how my mother told me to do it. And so, you know, a couple weeks later, she was at her grandmother's house, and he noticed that her grandmother was making the roast, and she cut off the left end and the right end. And the little girl asked the grandmother, Grandmother, why do you cut off the ends of the roast? You gotta, let the juices flow, and it's just, and that's the way my mother taught me how to do it. So then a week later, she was at her great-grandmother's house. And so the great-grandmother cut the ends off the roast, and she goes to the great-grandmother, Great-grandma, why do you cut off the ends of the roast? And the great-grandmother looked at it, so it fits in my pan. So just because we've done things generation to generation to generation, sometimes you have to ask the question, why are you doing something? And so, you know, when you look at the Chapter 70 funding formula, which determines what school districts get what monies, right? You know, a part of most people think that every child in the Commonwealth, whether from the inner cities to the rural agricultural areas, should be entitled to the same equal education opportunity and the same money spent. And Chapter 70 actually works with two basic components. You know, one is property valuation, and the second thing that they snuck in 2007, I believe it was an income formula for the town. And so the basic feeling was, well, wealthier communities can pay for more of their education costs. It doesn't account for the fact that a town like Dudley is 25% agricultural or APR protected land, right? But what it does is it distorts how individuals are viewed in the community. So let me give you an example. So let's just say 100 people lived in Dudley, and the average income was $13,000 a year per household. Well, if you get a very wealthy family, say a hedge fund manager moves in with a $500 million a year income or $100 million a year income, the state says that everybody in that town now earns $50,000 a year more.
Something like that happens in Foxborough, doesn't it?
And so there are towns that literally a wealthy family moves in, they're viewed as being wealthy now by the state, and they get less aid. It doesn't change the fact that a senior citizen on a fixed Social Security income, you know, of say $17,000 or $18,000 a year, all of a sudden the state says, well, you're wealthier. Just because that family moved in doesn't mean that that senior citizen's income has gone up. So what happens is disproportionately, they get whacked and hurt really bad with property tax increases tied to the need for the schools for more money. And so we said, why don't we just simply get rid of Chapter 70 funding and look at it. I mean, if you really want to be equal and fair, let's look at maybe a statewide consumption tax or part of the sales tax. I mean, the lottery was originally supposed to be 100% for education. What happened to that? So I sort of got, you know, there was no disagreement from the State Auditor's Department that the funding formula is flawed. But it was like, you'll have a better shot of pushing water uphill than to get that changed. And so I just reached out to a couple of, you know, state reps and state senators, and their immediate reaction, none of our local ones, people that were influential in creating Chapter 70, and they're like, don't touch my Chapter 70 funding formula. It works. So you have this mentality at the State House that nothing's broken with Chapter 70. Their basic feeling is that everybody's always going to complain that they never get enough money. That was actually an exact quote. The formula works. And they just don't. So how do you convince people who think something works doesn't work? And so that's just a side note. So I think long-term wise, you know, if they just froze the property tax and then any increases across the entire state for education tie into something else that everybody pays into. You can't, because what'll happen is we're going to get a scenario like Hartford, Connecticut, that's on the verge of bankruptcy now, where the affluent people move out, right? There's a mass migration from the high tax states to the lower tax states down south. You go to New York, a simple raised ranch pays $15,000 a year in property taxes now, with like 70% of that going to the schools. That's what's in our future if we don't change something now. And so, I don't know, maybe there's no magic bullet, but there's definitely issues, and I really feel for a lot of the people that are on fixed income. I mean, if we keep raising the property taxes, we're gonna force them out. It's almost legalized thievery in my mind, what we're doing to these poor people. But that's my own personal opinion. But the good news is it's starting to get attention. You know, the state auditor, you know, is always considered a nonpartisan, you know, kind of agency. They're trying to always make sure people are supposed to be doing things according to accounting rules and regs and the law. And so, you know, if they can get this done, you know, it would mean pretty close to, at the end of the day, almost another $1 million for the Dudley Charlton School District, just for what the state owes them today. And that would help the town invest in their recreation commissions and agricultural commissions and roads and highways and sidewalks and things along those lines. So it was a really good meeting. I think I'm going to put this report, I can probably grab it as the PDF, and I'll just put it on the website somewhere under the economic development, so that if people want to read it, they can. It's not exciting reading, but it's it's well worth it. And I want to thank, you know, the you know, Greg Desto was there, and, you know, again, all the people that attended that meeting, you know, for participating. Any questions about that? All right. Next is the Worcester County Economic Development Meeting Recap, Regional Cooperation. This was an event that that Greg, our town administrator, was invited to. And myself and Don and Greg attended this. It was in Worcester, hosted by the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. And what they're doing, it's called a SEDS process. And what that means is a comprehensive economic development strategy, CEDS. And by, there's 22 towns that are part of this district. Dudley has never offered to do this before, and Don and both Greg said, you know, we need to be a part of this. By joining this regional economic development effort and creating the SEDS district, and correct me if I'm wrong with anything here, Don, it will allow us as a region to present a comprehensive strategy to the federal government and thus be eligible for grants from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which is the EDA. It actually says the SEDS process is designed to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the region in order to develop an implementable economic development strategy. And two of the outcomes would be obtaining EDA Economic Development District designation, increased access to federal funds for municipal projects that fall within established SEDS goals and are in the EDD region. And then, and they're going to be having regular meetings on this. What we were beating the drum for at the meeting was, and this was pretty much most of the communities, is we have an aging infrastructure issue here. So infrastructure was very important. I mean, even Dudley's, you know, we have sewer pipes and water pipes that are 100 years old. And we just don't have the money to get that replaced. And so infrastructure was a big issue. Agriculture here in Dudley. You know, we really want to take that dormant agricultural land and make it vibrant again. So is there, and what kind of funding is available for that? And the other thing was we pointed out that we have old mills in town. One of them with a proposal that had come in, it was a $40 million rehab estimated cost. That's a lot of money for a small town like Dudley and for that landlord. But those buildings are important to us. And so that's some of the things that we'd like to see as part of the regional plan. Don, I'll let you join in with anything you want to add to this.
You just summed it up very well.
Okay, if you can just speak into the mic so people hear.
Okay. You summed it up very well.
Okay. So it's a regular process. It's not going to happen overnight. And we actually had more representatives, I believe, than any other town, right? Between the three of us. I think overnight too. But it was good, you know. Just, you know, we can do our thing in Dudley, but to be part of a larger thing as well kind of makes sense. And what I would offer up is that if anybody on this committee would like to be a part of this and go to these meetings, just reach out to me and we'll get you, part of it as well. All right? So that's that. The Economic Development Plan update. Well, Don, you said you got something that came in on Thursday. Based upon your reaction, it didn't sound like it was good news.
I didn't get a chance to print too many copies. I just really just saw it this morning, actually.
You want me to read it?
Yes.
Is that the easiest thing?
I don't know where this stands right now. I tried to call hold CMRPC this morning, but nobody was answering, so we must have a staff meeting going on.
All right. So it says, this is dated Thursday, April 12th. Hello, planners. Yesterday, the Massachusetts House Ways and Means Committee released their budget and did not include specific funding for District Local Technical Assistance, DLTA. Without an amendment, there will be no funding for DLTA. As you know, this funding is distributed to all of the 13 regional planning agencies to act as technical assistance centers for municipalities on a wide range of land use and planning functions. Representative Donato filed an amendment to restore the language required funding for the program. Please ask your Mass State Representative to support Rep. Donato's amendment today. All right. So, once again, the state is here to help.
Who?
Themselves.
Oh.
All right.
I'm not sure exactly where that stands. I mean, I tried to get a hold of Ron. I tried to get a hold of Dominique. I tried to get a hold of Trish. They must be on all the staff meeting.
All right.
So let's see before we send anything, let's see what the latest is, certainly.
All right. Is there any objection from the board if I send a letter on behalf of the Dudley Economic Development Committee, to Representative Durant, State Senator Fatman, Governor Baker, and our local representatives that this is important for our Phase 2 economic development, and we really
Phase
would
3
like.
too, don't forget Phase 3.
Phase 2 and 3,
Can't get Phase 3 without Phase 2.
yeah. So any objection to write a letter that they should restore the
So
funding?
maybe everything is copacetic right now, I'm not sure, but I'll
All
certainly
right,
find out as soon as I
well,
can.
I'll write a letter. They'll tell me.
Have it drafted. They give you a sample on the second page of this.
Okay. And I can, yeah, everybody can, just if you want to look over that. All right. The other thing is, you know, the Board of Selectmen will probably be holding public hearings on our 2 warrant articles for the Agricultural Commission and the Recreation Commission. Still working on finishing the actual 5-year economic development plan. There's just waiting for some things to kind of fall into place. And then what I'll do is I'll probably, I mean, most people have a good sense of what's in the plan already. It's just kind of formalizing it in a document that we can add into our master plan. And there's probably going to be 90% addendums, you know, because, you know, the library's plan is in there, the cultural council's plan and things like that, just so that people can kind of see what the various departments are doing. What I did want to talk about that in looking at our version of the economic development plan, originally I had asked Nichols for representation on this board because any economic development plan should have them involved. And that's why, you know, PJ is really here. Now that we got this darn brochure out of the way, we can get back to, you know, kind of our core business. The one thing that we really, I mean, there's some things in the CMRPC draft that address Nichols, right? Like, and helping our, like the Park and Shop Plaza, right? You know, they proposed maybe the sidewalk down. I know Don is, I'll have him talk a little bit about a village district, and I think part of that area may be even encompassed by that. But as far as Nickel going 5, 10, even 20 years down the road, and I'm not going to put you on the spot now, but I think it's important that the town understand what Nichols' growth plan is, and what is Nichols going to need. First, what are they going to need from the town? You know, water, sewer, is there access, is there transportation, is there street lights? I don't know. What are they going to need to continue to grow? And then what would they like to see? Because I really do believe, you know, Nichols being the large employer that they offer great jobs for a lot of residents in Dudley. They offer a great educational facility. As the whole education system is reformed, I see Nichols becoming a very big partner with us, with our Dudley Charlton Regional School District, especially as people get into their latter senior high school years, to do some cross education. And, you know, things are going to change, and to have the asset in town here, I think it would be a healthy Dudley has a healthy Nichols. And so I don't know if you can go back to Nichols and give us a punch list and let us see if we can actually incorporate that into the final plan, or at least, you know, some objectives, and we can iron out details as time goes by. But residences, you know, are you going to need more student housing? Are you going to need more classrooms? Are you going to need another campus? Are you going more online? So do you need infrastructure in the sense of better broadband services, things along those lines? I know the Verizon tower should help Nichols, according to, you know, Verizon, when that goes in over by the Duncan. But please go around, anybody. This is open conversation.
What is Verizon putting in?
Verizon's was approved for a cell phone tower. So where the Dunkin' Donuts is on West Main, right by the courthouse.
Right.
So over on the right side of there,
Okay.
there'll be one. that's just, you know, it's supposed to provide better coverage to the West Dudley area and like Dudley Hill.
Okay. Do they have any plans for 5G?
I have not spoken to Verizon, but my background is wireless. All the carriers are working towards 5G right now. Yeah.
And that's what the town wants?
My personal feeling is that a lot of the wireless carriers are going to be radically different 5 to 10 years from now. And it's all because of a company called SpaceX. So SpaceX is deploying a network of 4,000 to 5,000 state-of-the-art satellites that is supposed to provide gigabyte-level wireless service, ubiquitous, without coverage issues, all across the globe. That's an Elon Musk company. So I think that's gonna force the wireless carriers to radically redo their businesses. Broadband for everyone, cheap. Right now, our only choice in Dudley is really Charter. You know, Verizon's abandoned their copper. So, you know, unless you're on a fiber optic line from Verizon, you know, really, Verizon wants everyone to be wireless. And really, what other choice do we have for broadband here?
How about Nichols? Are they looking forward to 5G also?
I couldn't,
know?
I don't speak that language at all. I know the faster
5G
the
just
better.
means the 5th generation.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
It's supposed to have an effect on regular people.
The way you have to look at the generations of wireless is, you maybe remember 2G, right? I mean, for some of us older folks, us before your time, we actually used to have modems connected to phone lines, and they used to make buzzing noises when you connected to the
Plug the
internet.
thing.
I got the AOL dial-up, yep.
Yeah, the phone that actually
Plug the phone right into it.
into a piece. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all, you know, each generation just gives you more bandwidth, capacity, and speed. That's it. You know, the big thing is, you know, and it's all designed for what's called IoT, which is the Internet of Things, where your electric meter is always communicating with the electric company, you know, and all your different devices that are out there just talk. Your refrigerators are updating your smartphone saying you need milk. That's really, at the end of the day, they just become a little bit more efficient. But, you know, our fire department has had huge issues with their radio system because as Verizon has abandoned the copper, their system is designed to always kind of be online so that when you press the radio, it works like a repeater system. And there are issues as Verizon has let that copper network degrade for reliable radio communications over there. So, you know, there's an effort, AT&T was awarded a contract called FirstNet, which I don't know if you remember, at 9/11, the big problem, even the Worcester fire tragedy, was interoperability between various public safety agencies. And so with the Worcester fire tragedy, for instance, right, everybody converged on the scene and their radios wouldn't work, too much. 9/11, right, public switch network went down, all the radios went down, you know. So FirstNet, it took this long for the federal government to finally issue the award, but they've awarded that to AT&T. So AT&T will probably be the first out there, probably with a 5G network, but a portion of that network is going to be specifically reserved just for municipal and public safety use. How that plays out here is probably a year or two away.
Yeah, I heard they were supposed to start in the big cities this summer.
It's always cheaper to go in the cities.
Yeah. See how it works.
Yep. Anything else you'd like to add on this, on Nichols in particular, or what you see?
Oh, I'd be very curious what Nichols would really like to see in the town. I've thought about it a lot.
yeah, I mean, I think I can come back with some sort of a punch list in terms of where we foresee we're going. I mean, we're not an institution that's looking to double in size. That's not who we are. That's not the niche that we are. But you know, I mean, some of our structures need updating and those kinds of things that we can see 10 years down the road. So I think that's, you know, I don't know how concrete of a list I can bring, but I think I can bring some ideas.
The goal would be to at least be able to throw it on, in the plan, on,
Yep.
on people's radar.
Right.
So that they say, oh, we didn't know this was coming.
Right. Yeah.
We know this was available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows, I mean, you know, maybe even as part of this regional economic development thing, because there were others that had mentioned some schools in their areas as well.
Yeah.
And maybe we can all tie it in together too. Joanne, would you like to add anything on the Nichols portion, or?
No, I think you've hit it. I think probably access from the college getting down to some of the facilities, like you're talking sidewalks, that type of infrastructure makes sense. That's smart for them to get them down safety-wise. I mean, they seem to have had a great plan in the way they've developed their campus
Yeah.
for the land area that's up there. So I think to tie into the community, that would be the next smart move.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I mean, anecdotally, I can say, you know, I mean, our young people are looking for places where they can work and eat and, you know, spend time and money in the town as opposed to always driving elsewhere to do things and get a bite to eat and recreation and those sorts of things. So.
Russ, do you want to add anything to this? Or?
Yeah, I would just say whatever is needed to help support Nichols College and their end mission, you know, if it's to, you know, stay a smaller college or, you know, if it's to grow, double in size, whatever the mission is, what the town can do to support that, I think is really important. I like what PJ said about, you know, what the kids want. They want places to eat. They want places to, you know, go have fun or do something cool, not have to go out of the town. You can bring that back into Dudley. I think that's huge. But outside of that, yeah.
I notice every now and then, I don't know if you still do it, I see a sign that says Bison Bucks. What is that?
It's part of a student's meal plan, and they get to spend it at different local institutions. And so a lot of the restaurants in town and in the Webster area, it's cash, basically. They can use it as cash. It's part of their meal plan, or you can add money to it if you've exhausted that. And so they can go down to Jimmy's and get a pizza, or call and Jimmy's delivers it, which is even better. They don't ever have to leave, and it's a cash, basically, that they can use in town. And the vendor has to go through a process to be able to get a card reader to use it.
Yeah.
And I think there is, but I can't think of how many vendors we have right now, but quite a few. Park and Shop, CVS, Jimmy's, Yummy's, several of the places, I think Mexicali, Panera, so quite a few people in the area to entice students to use it. And it's good for us that students have an opportunity to get off campus and not feel like they always have to have cash in their hand, which many of them don't. So.
Yeah.
How far away is Panera Bread from Nichols College?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Because they're starting to do a delivery service. I know by my work, they actually deliver. We're about 10 minutes from a Panera, too.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool if you guys talk to them and say, hey, try delivering out here first and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't
All
think
right.
they drive past Panera, Dippin' in the morning. Dippin', turn.
On the way to walk, they deliver.
Do they? Yeah, yep.
All right, so it's
that's
part of
what-
their meal
that's what
plan. All right.
Bison Bucks is.
So it's kind of a win-win for everybody, the local businesses,
Yeah,
students.
yeah. I think several of the local businesses do very well with the Bison Bucks. Very popular with the students.
I've seen it, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna ask.
That's what it is, yeah.
All right. All right, so we'll put that on, you know, we'll touch base during the next couple weeks. If you think you've made progress and you want to throw it on the agenda again to follow up on,
Okay.
we'll throw it there. Otherwise,
Sure,
you know, because I'm sure it's going to require you sitting down with a bunch of people too.
sure, yeah.
All right.
Let us get past graduation, then I have some more time.
All right.
2 weeks from now.
The next one, we started the conversation last time, and the old empty mills in town. I guess the first thing is, what does everybody feel that our responsibility is with these mill buildings? Or is there no responsibility on our part? Open discussion.
I think you've got a couple of constraints. Number one, you've got historic group you've got to deal with. I think that they probably should be a part of a discussion, along with selectmen. You've got safety issue and preserving a building that's historic. I mean, we certainly can't help them market to get people there if we don't know what the requirements are gonna be by the town, how much renovation could be done, what is the historic group gonna object to?
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of the two. I think you need to get an update from the selectmen and find out where do they stand safety-wise. If that's information that they can share, that's through their building inspector. And then just see what maybe what the thoughts are of the historic group.
Yep. Makes absolute sense. You know, my feeling is we have Chase, right, drafters, we have one mill complex that's very vibrant. So how do we make sure that they continue to be vibrant? And then we have two that are in trouble, right? Both freezing pipes, I believe, shut them down for the most part.
But you also have an issue that when you do more than, I think it's 30% of your assessed value, you have to come up to code. That's gonna be a major thing for these buildings. So
So please explain that to me.
Well, I think that's what
30% of
I
your
think it's
assessed
30% of you, if you do more than 30% of your assessed values, then the building department can make you bring it up to code.
88.
Now, is that a state law?
It's
Or is
just
that
a
local?
requirement, I know in selling real estate, that when you're selling it, people have to keep that in mind, all these people that wanna do flips, otherwise they can go in, let's say you're buying a 4-unit building, you could be made to go in and put sprinkler systems in your building, which you wouldn't have had before. So I think it's really a conversation through the building department. I don't possibly see how there can be renovations to that place and not be more than 30% personally.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean.
So I don't know.
yeah.
I think it's gonna be a team effort on whether you were required, what's needed, how do they do it? I think they're in a catch-22 here. I think there's a big catch-22.
See, Don, what I'm thinking is, you know, with that regional district, right? If it is a state law that says like 30% of the assessed value, right, you gotta bring it up to code. There's gotta be federal and state grants. I think it's Mass Works or something like that, that maybe
That's not so much buildings as infrastructure, but,
it's more infrastructure.
yeah, it's kind of difficult to get funding for buildings compared to that.
But
Sure,
what if there
I'm sure
was
it's out
some
there.
sort of 0% loan or something out there that,
Sure, it's out there. We can look it up a little bit further.
all right, see, I didn't know about the 30%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a biggie.
Thus explains why doing the condos or the apartments they had talked about there was gonna cost $40 million. Probably most of that is getting it up to code. Which you want on the fire and safety side,
Yeah.
you know, because you don't wanna be selling something that's gonna kill somebody down the road.
No, absolutely.
That's not good.
At one time, an original project, it was for condos. They would have been beautiful, and that's when we had the water and sewer. You couldn't
Yeah.
tie into, we couldn't make it happen for them. And then over the time, then they went to other things to try and get an income stream out of there, which was little businesses, which really isn't the most productive use of a building, but that's what they did
Yeah.
while they were in limbo land, and now they're in big limbo land. I think both sites have got those issues that are gonna
Yeah.
come into play. I think maybe the person we ought to invite before us is the building inspector. Maybe we can chat and let everybody understand how some things tie in to an economic plan for getting businesses in to do renovations to buildings. He might be able to give you
You know
some
what?
insight.
That's a great idea. I will reach out and see if they're willing to come into our next meeting and just talk to us about what's involved. You know, any objection for me? All right.
How about the Historical Society?
You know what? That's a great idea to have them in attendance too. All right.
And for what it's worth, Nelson has been very good to encourage people with renovations and been able to interpret as well as he can to work with them to get stuff done. But even he has limitations of how much leeway he's got on doing this. He's very, very good. I think over the last few years, we've seen a lot of buildings, a lot of properties redone because of the fact he has worked with people to get it done. So he's to be complimented on that. It used to be a little more difficult before. to get the communication. He's always open to communication, and sit down and explain to them why, how, what you can do and you can't do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be a very educational discussion. Because we know if we do nothing, we're gonna have safety issues, and the longer time goes on, the more expensive and difficult it will be to save them, to save those mills. So, all right. Anybody want to add anything on the old mills, or? I mean, is Nichols looking for residences?
Classroom space?
That's right. Russ, would you like to add anything at all?
Do we know if there's any hazardous material in those buildings at all?
Some mitigation's been done, but I'd imagine there's still lead paint and things of that type.
So no, like, chemicals, no oil or anything like that, drums of chemical?
I
or
think
anything?
all that sort of thing's been taken out, right, to the best of my knowledge.
In a building like that, probably the most prevalent thing that could show up is asbestos.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
the-
what,
That's the first thing that would hit me in those kind of structures.
When I was in the fire department back in my hometown, the town next to us had some big mills like that, and they went up one day, and that was a 3 or 4 day fire to fight that. It was bad. So a lot of that, because they had piles of rags and whatever and combustible material in there, and it all caught one day, and that was it. Just making sure that they're safe from that perspective, I guess, would be important as well.
And that would be the fire department that would be all over that,
Well, I'm
right?
sure they've been in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty on top of that
Yeah.
stuff.
That's a great point. I mean, look what happened with that Webster fire.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things at the regional meeting that we talked about. Because they were talking about, disaster relief, and, we kind of just mentioned that, on a federal and a state level, we have pretty good disaster response and a lot of money's available. But when a mill goes up in flames in your local community, and it's not covered by federal or state grants and cleanups and stuff, I mean, the disaster is local. We need some assistance or some program in place. Because that's a nightmare scenario if that building never goes up.
There's
So-
something romantic and nostalgic about those mills when they're redone and they're redone right.
Yeah,
and
they look really good.
they're
Yeah.
beautiful, but it seems the journey getting there is pretty insurmountable sometimes, so it'll be interesting to see what they have to say.
A lot of, when you look at towns like Douglas, the Schuster Mills, the Haywood Mills, they did that into condos. And I recently took a look at condos that are done on Water Street, and that was some sort of a mill, and it's quite elegant with the 10-foot high ceilings. They did great kitchens and a very contemporary feel, not huge units. And then even what they did with Bartlett High School, if you've never taken a tour there and looked at the senior housing, to have preserved the building with there in simplicity, but very nicely done.
Yeah.
I would say it would also be smart probably to invite somebody from historic group at that same meeting if you're gonna bring the building.
Yeah,
inspector.
that's what Ellen said there. So we'll have Nelson, we'll ask Nelson if he can attend, and someone from the historic side, and just, let's have a conversation.
And how do we market it? Once we land on something, if it is condos or retail, whatever the case is, how do we market it out there so, developers know, hey, this is available to come use, What are the quickest routes in and out of town? How can people get to 395 from here and commute up to Worcester or down to Connecticut if they work there? We're about an hour away from the casinos down in Connecticut. We're 30 minutes from tops, 20 minutes from Worcester. About an hour and a half from Boston. How can we get people that want to live here and live in cool places like that and then commute into work?
All right. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add, in regards to the mill discussion? All right, so let's go, town planner. Would you like to add anything, or?
I can tell you that tomorrow, this is the workshop that was continued from a snow day last month. I'm going to a workshop sponsored by the Mass Downtown Initiative, MDI. It's about branding and wayfinding. Does anybody, you don't know what wayfinding is, right? Signage to get you around town, basically. Simple, direct signage to get you around town and to the attractions and so forth. I know we're a little bit different on that one because we don't really have a defined downtown like some of them do, but nevertheless, I'm sure we can apply some ideas to what we have here. Any suggestions, any ideas, things you'd like me to bring up, or? Branding means you kind of try to get a focus of what your town is about, you know, your brand. Try to sell your brand.
Well, I believe Dudley's been running on, it's a special place.
What's special about it?
Live, work, and play.
Work and play.
It's the people that make us special, Don.
Well, it is.
Anybody have any ideas?
I mean,
Well, maybe you'll get some ideas when you go.
Yeah.
You can let us know.
I know the reason I moved up to Dudley is because all the farmland and the, the kind of the feel of town was really nice when we came out here. Felt, comfortable and homey. So that's kind of my interpretation of what Dudley's brand is. Agricultural land, 25%. You said protected agricultural land in the town. That's huge. And back to the little conversation we had last meeting about the breweries and the wineries and trying to get all that agricultural land used for that use. That's kind of what I think of when I think of the town.
Some people like to say we're in the middle of nowhere, but really we're in the middle of everywhere.
Yeah.
Because of our proximity to a lot of things. And
It's
it's
very
choosing to
true.
be-
It's more the middle of everywhere. It's definitely more the middle of everywhere.
Yeah.
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 You had wanted something about a village district walk. Need to remind you of that.
Okay. Well, now I think spring may be finally be here by next weekend. Seemed like the people in the planning board were more interested in Saturday afternoon. I don't know what your availability is, but I can make myself available just about any time, I guess.
Well, I guess my suggestion is that if the planning board and yourself decide on a date and time that you want to do the walk, I'll send it out to everybody here, and if they
Okay.
can make it, they'll just join you.
Okay.
Now, if you can just tell the board what the whole purpose of the district walk would be and what you're looking at doing here.
In the study in 2015, there was a desire to do a walk of the village district that was focused on in that study, which was pretty much the section of West Main Street from here to the bridge. Actually, more from the fire station to the bridge, to the town line. What could be done to enhance the area? And it's pretty much just some suggestions I can get for you that were given at the time about what we would be looking for. I'll certainly get that out too. We'll bring that back up again and take the walk and take a look at the conditions and some of the ideas that were out there and see what we come up with and for recommendations.
When I was looking through the actual zoning or some of the proposal, correct me if I'm wrong, did I read that they wanted residential development restricted in part of this, which made no sense to me? Or did I read it wrong?
I don't recall. Sorry, I don't recall what
All right.
particularly said.
And the reason why
Part.
I mentioned that is, 20 years ago, CMRPC had really pushed the town to restrict residential development in industrial areas. And Dudley bit the bullet and did that. So,
What?
and it caused tremendous hardship, and most of it, I think a lot of it has been undone since then because of the hardship.
I think what was going on at the time is that there was actually a provision that allowed residential development to be done in industrial districts.
Yeah. So, it caused enormous hardship when we did restrict it. And when I see when I think of village, I'm thinking combination residential and small businesses all blended together. And so,
They're one integral.
yeah, so I forget, somewhere in here, I remember reading it there, and I just, just if you could keep your eyes as they do this to make sure that
Well, yeah,
it's not
Right.
snuck in.
okay, I understand. There are all kinds of things out there. There's lifestyle villages and live and work villages. There's all kinds of things out there that are being looked at. Village centers, like the way we used to do them in the old days.
Again, you know, even when we did the master plan, we talked about, okay, where is the center of Dudley? You know, having a town common and things like that, and where some communities are laid out properly for that to occur, and I don't know, just with infrastructure and roads, if we really are. And we've got the Dudley Hill area, you know, top. Most people don't realize that that's really the core.
Yeah, maybe I can bring that up in the course of the conversation, the workshop tomorrow. A unique situation. You don't have really to define the area that we can say this is the downtown.
And the interesting thing about that center is it's very historic, and, you know, if you try to do anything up there, you're gonna have issues.
That's a good,
Catch-22.
it's a good point to bring up too, that there are certain things you can't do in a historical district. It may restrict what your creativity could be.
All right, so the way we'll leave it is, once you guys set up the date and time for your walk, I'll just let everybody know, and then if you can make it, go for a walk, and as long as it's not like a day like yesterday,
Need a kayak.
we can row it.
Great day for marathon, huh?
Oh, I felt so bad for those people running
They're
yesterday.
dedicated.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll say that, they're very dedicated.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
What's that?
Anybody have anything else not on the agenda that they'd like to see added?
I'd like to put something out there.
Sure.
I think that, you know, as we're thinking about all these big areas, I think one of the things maybe we should kind of go back to, almost an organic, not generic, but genuine approach, is reintroducing ourselves to the local businesses, finding out what is it like to do business in Dudley? How can we help you become a better, more successful business? Or what is it about Dudley that helps that already exist? And, you know, I know we have a combined chamber between Webster and Dudley and Oxford. Webster, Dudley, Oxford, I think it is. But just being more intentional with our own storefronts and business owners, and just kind of a very organic, you know, what's it like to do business here? What else do you need to be more successful, or would bring other businesses in? And I think kind of going back to the books a little bit and hearing from them directly will help them feel supported. Not that they don't, but will certainly give me a greater sense for what's it like to be a business owner in town, and what else are they looking for.
I think we're looking to do some outreach in phase 2 of the strategic plan, so.
Right, but maybe
You've
if
done
we
there
help
as
get
well.
ourselves introduced, that will help bring them out when it's time. You know, I think we're kind of an unknown entity, and, I mean, I don't really feel like I have a good sense for what the business owners in town need or are looking for, but I'd sure like to take that into consideration more in this role.
I think PJ's hit it right on the head. I mean, we've been pretty busy with a lot of logistical stuff, from the website, right, this economic development plan, you know, this and that, trying to conquer the world. And I think going back to just to our local business and just say, hey, we're here and this is what we do, and reintroduce ourselves, I think that's a great idea.
Fire up the base, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have, right, the Webster Dudley Business Alliance. We have the Chamber of Commerce's. We have the Dudley Women's Club. What other business-oriented and networking type organizations are there?
That's it?
That's it.
You're going back, and you're going back to square one again, where we spent the first 10 meetings inviting businesses into this.
No, I'm not talking about inviting businesses, but part of me is thinking that if each one of us adopted one of these and represented the board to them, so the Webster Dudley Business Alliance, if we could get someone from our board to adopt them and be a part of their meetings and participate in their meetings and just become a part of their group.
Some
They-
of
they
us
could-
are.
So then you're, so then you're,
I don't know where you've been for the last 5
No.
years.
all right, Joanne, so how many times have you talked about what we're trying to do here to them? And invited them to the meetings and tell them, I mean, this is what I'm saying, is when I say adopt, not for yourself, but on behalf of the
We
committee.
had Webster Dudley, we had the president in here. We did not do the Webster Chamber of Commerce. We probably could do that, but we have reached out to them over and over on doing that. I think that I don't think you really have a handle of who our businesses are. If you were gonna walk the main street here mentally, do you see an inn? You don't see an inn. Do you see a restaurant? No, you don't see a restaurant. You see a lot of stores that distribute goods, but not, I mean, up on the college, wouldn't it have been nice on the big house that got sold with the barn if that had been an inn or bed and breakfast? Well, on my street, when I was a kid, there used to be a rooming house on Schofield Ave. That's long gone on doing that. But we don't have that kind of flavor that's out there. They are all pizza parlors, grocery stores, banks, you name it. You tell me what you see. That's not, no variety stores. I was a kid, there used to be 2 variety stores on Brandon Road. Then it became a fruit store. There was Skavonics, then there was a bakery. I could go back and name them. They don't exist. They went out of business. They don't serve the same purpose. So if you're trying to create a village, does your zoning allow you to do a bed and breakfast anywhere? Well, what you just said, it's gonna limit what you can do in that village area. 'cause
That's the
that
whole
would-
idea. We should do something to make it work for that, the village concept, if that's the case, if that's what everybody wants. And
Well, a lot of communities are trying to redo their infrastructure that's close to allow people to do apartments into some of these big houses, because small apartments generate income, another little kind of a business, keep it a community flavor, but those are some of the that's part of that green growth and all, but we just haven't done that.
I would venture to say that based upon all the stuff that we've done with the economic development plan, that when we talk about the Webster Dudley Business Alliance, right, Dudley Women's Club, and the chamber, that is only representing 15% of the businesses. If you look at the DBAs, we're probably 6 to 7 times more economic activity is being done in people's homes than on our main streets. There's a huge, quiet, home-based business in this town, and services.
Honestly, John, they've been busy for the last 15 years trying to survive. That's why you don't see them. They're busy trying to survive and keep their business going. I can name 10 businesses that have failed, that have come and gone. We tried, there was a bakery that was up near the courthouse. That didn't make it. It's a hard grind for a small business to do this. What is it, like 1 out of 3 fails, I think, statistic. It's a high statistic. I mean, are we trying to encourage growth? Sure, we've been trying to encourage growth, but
Many of these home-based businesses are based on what's called the knowledge-based economy, the new economy, internet-related services, consulting. And
That's
if we
what
can
you're-
help them grow and take that leap from moving out of their home into an office or into one of these mills, I think we can't forget them when we talk about this. I mean, we always talked about the retail space. At the end of the day, right, look at Dudley right now. My understanding is that the facility next to Big Lots, they've got some good hits on that. But other than that, the only vacant retail place I can think of besides the 2 mills is that little plaza, the Smart Plaza.
But that's big dollars. You know what? If you went to you ought to go to the Webster Dudley Business Alliance. People who come, quilting company that used to be down there, people who provide massage service, actually do body things and really things for people who are stressed. aromatherapy things. There's a lot of little businesses, but they can't afford to be in that plaza. My mother used to own a little store on Cross Street. It's now a little apartment. She used to have a yarn and woolen store there. And it was owned by the people who owned the house next door, and they rented it out. I can name 20 little businesses that were around. But the economy is not going to allow you to pay $800 a month in rent and be able to survive. Now, there are some cases like I could run a business out of my house. I'm zone business. So there are different areas in the center which would allow that to happen, but then it becomes make sure about parking, then it becomes about handicap accessible, then it becomes about all those things that if anybody's going to walk into your business, that you have to be in compliance with.
The last meeting that I went to with the Webster Dudley Business Alliance, and the next meeting is all about incubators. It's how do you help these businesses get into, to make that step, and what kind of facilities. And they brought in, an expert who helps does this. We've talked about a mentoring program between some of these businesses and the members of the Webster Dudley Business Alliance. So, but I think going back to what PJ was saying is, I think we need to reintroduce ourselves at a generic, granular level. And so, if we have somebody that's always attending the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, right? Look at connections we made with the biotech companies there, right? And some of the participants that were there, right? And if we had someone that was willing to step up and do the Webster Dudley Business Alliance and actually be there, not for themselves, but for this board. And if we did something for the Dudley Women's Club and others, I mean, if we each took a piece of the elephant, we could eat this thing.
Yes, but you also have to understand that I'm going to the Webster Dudley Business Line. I haven't been in 6 months. Why? I have classes. I have to make a living. I do business. So can I commit to do that every month? No, I won't commit to do that every month. So I'm a volunteer. That's what we all are,
yeah.
volunteers. So that's great in philosophy. It's short on practice. Look around the room. Who's not here? Who hasn't been here? Yeah, we can make a lot of promises, but we really need to be realistic on some of the things we're talking about. The best thing we do, we are televised every month, tell people some information. That's a tool to get to people. But we can't stand alone. You can't take it on all by yourself. But I don't think that we have a group, even here, who really understand businesses in town. Honestly, if I can name 16 to 25 businesses right off the top of my head. Everybody in here tell me who they are by name, who the people are? We had the gentleman that owns the insurance company, that he was the best person who came in at one of our beginning meetings, Stowe High, and he explained, because you know what, he takes such pride in his buildings, it just overwhelmed me. That's the perfect business owner, and yet we can look nearby, and there is vacancy there, and that building does not exhibit the same pride. It is vacant, and you know why it's vacant? Because of the cost to get a business in there. And we can't dictate to the public what they will charge for their cost to get someone into their building. So I think it's great in philosophy, and I think, yes, I think we all need to be cognizant that we should try and do a little more outreach, each of us individually, and be spokesperson. And you're right, I haven't stepped up in a meeting for the businesses alliance because I've been there for my own business. But I'm willing to talk about this. But I think the newspaper is a good place for you to do releases. They don't cost any money. That should have been part of our regular campaign. But again, that's somebody then that's going to take on the responsibility to say, we met, this is what was discussed, put it in the newspaper, get it to that, get it to the other one that goes out, the one that's over by the lake for a little publication. She's been very friendly to it. I think there are a lot of things you can do that keep you visible, that you're there as a resource, but I think it's too easy to say we're gonna, and then we don't follow through. That's just my own philosophy.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is, on the next agenda, I'm gonna put a list of all the business alliances and organizations locally. And then we'll let the individual members decide if they would like to adopt a group understanding that there's a commitment required outside of our normal hours, because, you know, it's, if you're gonna be a part of the Webster Dudley Business Alliance, we want you to be active and bring value, and you gotta just put it in your schedule, and we'll look and we'll see who wants to be part. And if at the end of the day, no one wants to commit to it, then so be it. But if someone wants to, then they'll do so, and I think it'll help the board long-term, but I'd like to do that and put that on the agenda. And if anybody, as I assemble this list, I'll just shoot quick emails out and say, okay, I know them, am I missing anybody? And if you guys can, at least we have an accurate list. And then I'll try to do some web links so that people can research what they do, what they, you know, and make a personal decision.
Let's test your memory. Do you remember what Mr. Ruda did years ago? Jimmy Ruda. How good your memory? Maybe you weren't in Dudley then.
I might not have been.
He was a selectman at one time. He did a thing that was like a spotlight on businesses, and he interviewed somebody every week. Maybe that's what we need to do, is to get the selectmen to give us a time, and we bring businesses in and interview them on the little spotlight that ran. He did that for a full year of all kinds of businesses.
We do that,
Who's doing the interviewing?
the selectmen.
Well-
And then we throw them on the website.
But you just talked about us being involved on doing that, if we're the economic development. We
But
did
that's
that.
prime time for them, you know, with the select, more people watch the selectmen meetings than us.
I think if you had a separate segment where they could actually come in and they are one-on-one, not sitting as part of a five-man board that they're working on, one person interviews them and asks them the questions about their business that will showcase them, I think that's different. I've been a selectman than when everybody sits there and looks who's gonna ask a question. I think what he did was a real, see if they still have some of the tapes. He did a fabulous situation on businesses, Webco, small companies, all of that, and it was great, and it ran. So what do you want? You want something that's there all the time running on a regular basis. I don't think we use our cable to help promote. I don't think we use our library as a facility to help promote. I think there are a lot of tools we can do and involve more people, not just us, to let them shine doing what they'd like to do and talk to these people, and I think you would see different exposure.
But it takes volunteers to take ownership of each of those efforts.
If you make a schedule and you put out a schedule and somebody signs up for 1 month out of 12, that's different than asking me to do it 12 times. Lisa has we had a list. Lisa can give you a list of every business that's in town to run it off. But
You still need someone to own the project.
well, you want us
To
to own the
create the
project.
schedule.
You're just putting it on us right now. We already own this project. If you want us to own the project, then let's own a month of doing the interview and bring somebody in and let them tape it. I can live with that better than tell me I gotta go to my Webster Dudley business, and every month I gotta try and get there and be the promoter every time I'm there and forget I don't wanna do that. You become like a hound. I don't wanna be a hound. But I think there are some opportunities you can look at, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Some people did some things that were very good that worked, that we maybe need to look at. We're going back and trying to reinvent the wheel, and it was invented. He did such a great job. They ran those tapes a while ago, showing some of the interviews that he had done. How good he had Buzz Crawford on at the time. He had small companies. It was all about kind of like a spotlight on different things. And people kind of like that a little better than come before the selectmen.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I just want to learn, like, I'm trying to learn more about what, you know, what's going on and what people are looking for and what they're doing, and I didn't even know something like that existed prior. I've only been here 8 years, but
It
maybe
was
I
a
need
lot
to look
of-
back in the history a little bit, you know, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm just kind of like, I need that to get a better sense of what's going on, because I'm not a business owner.
I think you're on the right track, but I think you're trying to start all over to square one, and we already have square one somewhere in our files that we could capitalize on.
Pick up somewhere
Go
else.
back and pull that out as a resource and say, gee, did this work well, and maybe we ought to try it again to do that. But it was pretty, I forget when they ran it, I'm sure, I don't know if he was here, or, I bet Teddy Barron was around when that happened for taping all of that stuff. But it was great. Absolutely great. And 30 minutes of whatever time it was, free time for somebody to talk about their business one-on-one. But I think it's a different feel when you sit in a chair. He sat in a chair and talked to people. That's different than coming before the selectmen and you're sitting there at the mic and people don't.
Yeah, I'd rather not do that. I'd rather go.
I think it's better to have a
Gotta go to
series
them.
of questions. You let them know what you're going to talk about, and they can talk about the things they want to talk about, how it relates. And you could do that right down to the farmers, to anybody that you wanted on this. We don't use the cable to our advantage.
So I'll go back to my original question. Who's gonna own it?
You want us, the economic
Oh,
development, to
no,
own it.
you say us. I'm talking about us. Who here is gonna own what you wanna do? I'm not, I am spread too thin right now. I cannot take on anything else. I cannot own your idea.
I will bring you the information of how it existed before that we can follow up on it and see if we want to put together a schedule of something that is a once-a-month showcase.
That's a great start. And then maybe once we have that, we can see what's involved, and if somebody wants to own it here, then let's do it. But that would be perfect. And so what do you want to call it? The business spotlight, or
I think we need
just
to
on the
look back
agenda?
at what he called it.
Yeah, let's
I
look
would
back
be
and see.
curious as to what he referred to it as and see what it was called.
And this
at
was
the
Jimmy
time.
Ruda?
Jimmy Ruda.
Okay. Fred, does it sound familiar to you?
Before my time.
Before your time?
Okay.
We got four of them that we run, two on Crawford and one on Vietnam with somebody, interviewed, and one on the OBNA train station stuff. The rest of them got lost in the flood at Nichols. That we had, I don't know if we had any.
All right, that would be great, though.
I mean, just think about it, if you brought somebody from Nichols College in to talk about the whole campus, the programs that they have, and years ago, they used to do the baskets in the community at Christmas time. I think they've gone back doing something like that. They talk about, let them showcase themselves, what they are as part of the community.
How to get that to social media too, you know, how to get some attention around it on social media, because people are on Facebook and, you know,
Well,
Instagram,
Facebook
Twitter,
Live,
and everything like
why
that.
not a Facebook Live
Yeah,
segment that posts to the town of Dudley and reposts 100 times?
yeah.
That's a great idea.
I have to excuse myself.
Yep.
I have a meeting I have to get back to.
Well, with this in mind, is there anything else on the agenda?
Did we already vote on the minutes?
Oh. All right. We sent them out. Marcia, thank you for doing it. She's down in Florida, but she's been watching them and copying them over. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of March 20th,
I make a
2017?
motion, we accept the minutes
All
from
right,
March
Joanne has
20th.
made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. With that being said, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. You want to make it?
Make the motion adjourn?
All right, Russ's first motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Alan, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Fred, thank you.